Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Talent Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Patterson, Chief Growth Officer for Solutions Driven. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the COO of Refine Labs, Megan Bowen. Megan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Nikki. Thank you for having me on the show. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Absolutely. Again, we like to bring on guests that are thought-provoking, that are very visible on LinkedIn and social. Megan is definitely that. Refine Labs are a company that have grown quite considerably. Awesome career for Megan. I've followed you for a number of years now, and definitely at a place you seem to be extremely happy at, and part of some really amazing groups, Pavilion, Chief, etc. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of guests intrigued by our topics of discussion today. So let's get right to it. The way we like to do the Talent Intelligence podcast is kind of keep it light, but at the same time, try and have a little bit of structure to it as well. I think I'm very keen to understand Megan, the person, a little bit about Refine Labs and what you've learned as a person as you've grown through that journey, a little bit of maybe past, present, future, and how to build and scale a company, how to underpin the methodologies of people success. So let's just start with Megan, the person. Megan, you've started in sales. You've had some sales roles, some accounts roles, some customer success roles. Even if you were going to give us a quick 1-2 minute highlight of your career, tell me how you've got to where you've got to now.
Yeah, absolutely. While I was putting myself through school, I did a lot of different sales jobs, including selling Cutco knives. So you learn a lot about resilience and grit when you do that type of effectively door-to-door sales. But right after college, I jumped into the New York City startup scene. And so I spent the first 7 years of my career at an education technology company as an account manager. And that's when I really fell in love with that function, account management, customer success. It required you to flex, customer service skills, sales skills, project management skills, presentation skills. So strong foundation to my career. I moved on from that company and joined ZocDoc in the early days. I took a bit of a step back, was a customer support agent, but then ended up building out their entire post-sale function, which was my first experience building a team. Was then recruited by Grubhub and Seamless pre-IPO to build out their B2B account management division. Was there for 4 years, had a great run there. Was itching to kind of get back to a smaller company and build. I like the building phase the best. So that's when I went to Managed by Q to build out their account management function. And then that's when the scope of my career really expanded. I went from the head of account management to the chief operating officer at Managed by Q in about under 2 years. And then that chapter ended with an acquisition to WeWork, which was cool and exciting until it wasn't cool and exciting anymore. It's a story for another day. Got back into the food tech space at Platters as the head of customer success. The pandemic obviously negatively impacted that business, corporate B2B food ordering. And then had met Chris Walker on LinkedIn in 2019. Him and I were developing a relationship over time and ultimately decided to team up and build and scale Refine Labs together in the summer of 2020. And I have been there ever since. So that's the quick rundown of the career journey.
Yeah, I know you've just captured, loads of years in such a small time there, right?
Yes.
And I think what's really key is, and it's interesting, I've interviewed quite a lot of C-suite VPs, etc., and a lot of them have had that very, very challenging initial early sales role in their career, that's really set them up for, I guess, the hard work of everything else to come and loads of rejection, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it's probably not been plain sailing for you along the way as well. I mean, is there any one moment that you can think of, maybe fairly early in your career, that was a bit of a knockback that you had to get over?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had been an account manager for 7 years and I knew I wanted to manage a team of people, and I was looking for a management position, to manage an account management team or something like that. And I had found ZocDoc and really loved the product idea and thought this is definitely going to be successful. It was very early days. But the only position that they would offer me was being a customer support agent and taking over a 50% pay cut. But I saw the potential in that opportunity. And I knew that if I was willing to take one step back, that it could be an opportunity for me to take two big steps forward. And luckily that was the case. Being on the front lines, I was able to synthesize and observe like the key challenges in the business and put a business case forward for creating a post-sale department that didn't exist. And so because of that sequence of events, it even though I had an entry level position, I leveraged that to like I said, kind of summarize those insights and ultimately show them that I could do a lot more than what they hired me to do. And ultimately I got the opportunity to build out that team. And that was definitely a pivotal turning point in my career. I learned so much in a very short period of time that really informed my own leadership style and how I thought about team building from then on out.
Okay, cool. And I mean, you've mentioned team building a couple of times already. I think we're going to get to that in a little bit later. In terms of just that leadership style or having success in your career, is there one or two maybe mentors or people you've worked with or looked up to that you feel have helped get you to that next level?
I think when I was at my first company, this education technology company was called eChalk. My manager at the time was this woman, Nancy DeVore. And one of the things that she always taught me, and that I think is one reason why I've excelled in my career, is, don't let your job description prevent you from doing what is required for the business to be successful. And so, for example, really taking that mindset and that lesson that she taught me was really how I was able to go from the director of account management to a COO in 18 months. Because when I arrived at the business, I had a mandate to build my function, but I was recognizing that there were pretty critical, problems to be solved on the sales team, on the operations team. And as the head of the account management team, I was inheriting those problems, even though maybe I wasn't the owner of solving them.
Owning that,
and realizing okay, even if this is outside my function, I'm going to collaborate with my peers and my teammates to solve these problems first, because a lot of the issues that we're having in account management could be because we're selling to the wrong customer or our operations,
ICP, etc.
Exactly, isn't customer first. And so because I focused on solving the most important business problems, maybe at the expense of making my function look good, as opportunities came up to take over those functions, the CEO had seen me be effective in driving positive change in different teams. And each and every time came up to me and said, hey, do you want to take on sales? What about marketing? What about operations? And then eventually got to the point where I had the responsibility and scope of a COO.
Of everything. I mean, I think, look, I don't believe there's anything wrong with somebody saying, this is my role and I want to really excel at that role, and I want to own that. And I think that's totally fine. Because you hear a lot about A players, B players, etc. I don't necessarily think that sometimes an A player is somebody that's really good at their role, but then, like you say, is getting involved in something else. I've always tried in my career to act like the role I want next, or start to assume some of that responsibility. So when you go into that role, it's not like you're going from an SDR to an AE and it's a fish out of water type scenario. I think as well, you talk about building teams, you're talking about scaling teams as well. You need to wear different hats. It's very different going into a 40-person organization than a 400-person organization with the same job title, right? So it's knowing what's around you and how you become effective there. But it's a lot tougher to do at that small scale when you've got nothing there to build. So it makes it even more impressive. I think that maybe takes us on to the next theme. You talk a lot about people's success equals customer success equals company success. And I'm really, really keen. This is probably my most exciting bit of this show for me, to really get into your methodologies about genuinely building and scaling a company, because, there is talks of recessions and downturns and, valuations and different things, but you will always get startup and scale ups. You will always get opportunities. You'll always get investment, and people need to know what to do with that. So you have done that effectively for many years. I'm looking to pick your brain here and share with all of us the secrets.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's interesting because I think this sort of perspective or methodology or framework that I've really, developed over the course of my career, unfortunately has often been a case of being witness to companies making wrong decisions and prioritizing the wrong thing and realizing the downstream impact of doing so. And it's not, a lot of companies have been in this mindset of growth at all costs. Like, we need to do anything to grow. It doesn't matter if we're building a business. It doesn't matter if we, put our team in a bad position. We care about our customers, but only in the sense when it matters to us about how much money we can make from them, not what actually matters to them. And so basically, instead of, I saw so many instances where the leaders would say, I'm going to think about my company first, then my customers, and then my team. And it was very clear in their decision making and the way that they behaved and, what they prioritized, that was how they were thinking about things.
And their targets.
Yeah. Unattainable growth goals. And what I realized was, wow, if you flip that and you think about it in the complete opposite way, you actually have the ability to create a much more successful and sustainable and profitable business. And so that's sort of the root of how this kind of came to be. And what I've had the opportunity to do with Chris at Refine Labs is to apply this mindset and this framework and essentially prove to the world that you can build a profitable, sustainable, healthy business by putting your people first, then your customers, and then finally the company will benefit. You get the financial benefits that you're looking for as a company owner if you do that in the right way. And so if you want, we can kind of break down, like, for each of these components. For people success, I have kind of like 5 elements that are really critical to creating the conditions for people to do the best work of their lives.
I think we should be charging for this, Megan, to be honest. But, no, I think, see a really high level. It's easy to say this company is an awesome methodology or product or whatever, and people want to go and work there. There's something about genuinely building a really, really good culture that can, it has to go hand in hand. You can't just sell something that's not a good product, or you can, but if you can really tie both of them in together, like you have right now with Refine Labs, that I feel we very much have at Solutions Driven. If you have a place where people like what you have to offer and your people really enjoy working for you, you can scale that. So really keen to see these.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's break it down. We'll start with the people success element. And so really, I summarize it into these like 5 conditions. I'll kind of call them out, and then you can let me know if you want to dive deeper into 1 or 2 of them. And so the first is, a compelling vision and mission, right? People need to be attracted to what your organization is trying to do, right? And at Refine Labs, that's twofold. We're completely changing the way B2B companies measure and execute marketing. And at the same time, we're also changing the game on how a modern company can and should be built. And so we kind of have this dual vision that we are working towards. The second element is psychological safety and trust. And I've been in a lot of different work environments that were not healthy. And I saw the impact that it had on the people, but also the bottom line. And that's really crucial if you want to create a place that people really feel like they can show up as their true selves and speak their mind. The third is autonomy and empowerment. People need the time and the space to do their work. No one likes to be micromanaged. And so it's really about how are you putting the right people in the right roles and setting the right expectations and the right goals and letting it happen, right? Number 4 is recognition and feedback. I always say, like, the easiest and most inexpensive thing to do to retain your team is to say thank you and to recognize good work. Additionally, when you're you mentioned earlier, we revealed our new company core values yesterday at our all hands meeting. And a big part of what we do is we recognize people when they embody our values as a way to reinforce what's really important to the company, for people to make it really clear how important those values are. And that we'll recognize it when people really show up and showcase those values in the day-to-day of the company.
Awesome.
And then the last, number 5, is achievement and growth, right? People need to feel like they are accomplishing something. They need to feel that they are being challenged to grow professionally and personally. And so there's a lot of other things that matter, but I kind of boiled it down to these 5 elements, which, like, if you can get these 5 elements right, you can really create the conditions for people to do the best work of their lives.
Definitely. I mean, and I think that could go into almost any function in the business. I think it's very important to have very clear values and everybody understand the journey that the company wants to go on. It's very easy for someone to steal those values and throw them into this company, and they just don't tie in. And you see a lot of startup companies and you see the values and you go, God, they're just the same as one of the last startups I've seen or whatnot. But again, it's how you then transition that into your own culture. I mean, for us, we actually have monthly rewards and incentives all based on those values. So who has demonstrated that value the most, which means the next month people want to demonstrate that value. Mm-hmm. And, we've found that it's a really good, you can't vote, you can only vote for so many people in your own team. So you're actually getting to know what other areas of the business do. We meet every Tuesday, for example, just to hear how everyone else is going on, to keep that one team mentality, which is key when you're in that remote world as well. What has been the toughest one of those 5 for you at, say, Refine Labs?
I think that probably the most difficult to establish and to maintain is psychological safety. And as you grow really quickly, it becomes even more challenging to maintain. Yeah. And what I tell my team, my team will always, I get this question a lot. We're growing really fast. What are you doing to maintain the culture that we are, that we've created, right? We're growing, but we don't want things to change. We like how things are. And what I tell them is, I can't control it anymore. At this point, all I can do is try to put the right systems in place to ensure that we bring the right types of people into the organization, and to be really clear on what our values are. And then use our actions to reward and punish the behaviors we will accept and the behaviors we will not accept, right? And so when someone is actively living against our values, that needs to be addressed ASAP. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that individual needs to leave the organization if it's not the right fit and they're not willing to commit to the values that are important to us. But really, it's about making the team understand the role that they play in the ongoing evolution of the culture at the company. It is up to every single person to live their values, to hold each other accountable, to surface when things are wrong. And I think that's challenging to do. You really don't have control over it, right? So you're trying to use influence and communication and actions to reinforce the behaviors that you want, and to send a clear message when there are behaviors that you will not accept or tolerate.
Yeah. And I'll come back to that maybe in the last part around the kind of a talent hiring piece, because I think that's super important, how you then hire for that, to make sure you're not punishing more often than not, and people are in the right spots, etc. So we'll come on to that. Awesome start. Okay, let's move on to customer success, because I feel we have built a business purely off of delivery. Really good delivery breeds everything else. We're a business of 24 years that has only really had a sales function for 5 years, because it was just do a good job and you'll get more, or can you help us in a different country, or can you help us in a different function? And I think it was a really good way to start, because we've tried to sustain that and make that better and have an amazing experience for, say, both candidate and client. You're focusing this from the client side. So keen to understand how you look at customer success.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Really, I spent the bulk of my career in customer success as an individual contributor, as a leader of and builder of many account management and customer success teams at multiple companies. And so this is really a synthesis of, this is essentially my customer success philosophy after all of those years of experience. And basically, these are 8 elements that are 100% required if you want to do customer success in the right way. And so we'll go through these 8. So the first
is my favorite number, by the way, 8. So you're off to a good start.
There you go. There you go. Number 1 is be proactive. You have a tattoo and everything.
Yeah.
So being proactive is key. I think that's really the difference between customer service and customer success, right? Customer service, customer support is reactive. Customer success needs to be proactive. Often that isn't the case. Number 2 is add strategic value. The whole kind of ethos of the customer success function is that you're a trusted advisor to your customer and that they come to you for the outcomes that they're trying to drive within their own organization. Number 3 is manage expectations. And so the root of all discontent is unmatched expectations, right? Expectations not matching reality. And so it's really critical that is managed appropriately in the sales process, in onboarding and ongoing. Communicate regularly. So communication is key. I don't really actually believe in over communicating. I think especially in a distributed virtual like workplace that we all operate in day to day now, regular communication is really critical.
I said to my team just this week, and that's one I'd like to quickly stop on, is communication is, particularly in the world we are in now, which is, mostly hybrid, mostly flexible for the companies that are doing well. And, for me, no communication is the worst possible thing. The old no news is good news is absolutely gone, and I think when hiring, people know it's tough. People only give us tough roles, for example, or really critical roles. And, going a week without anything to me is heart attack. Even if this has been a tough week, engagement has been slow, but we've learned this, or someone told us this that made us think, or can we run this past you really quickly? The small subtleties of communication are, massively underrated, I think, by so many leaders out there. So for me, that's the most important one of the ones you've mentioned so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with all of those points. So the next 4, number 5 would be stay aligned with the decision maker. And so I think the key here is that often the people that you work with directly day to day at your customer's account aren't often the final decision makers. And so making sure that you are connected to all of the right people so that you have a strong sense of how the relationship is going, both on sort of the day-to-day execution, but the strategic connection to the ultimate decision maker that, things change a lot, things evolve in businesses, so you have to stay close to them.
Yep.
6 is build authentic relationships. And this is really around creating trust with your customers so that they are willing to tell you early and often when things are going off course, so that you can course correct things before you're at the point of no return. And people often, I actually have customers at every company that I've worked at that I still keep in touch with because I just built a genuine friendship with them and they were great people, right? So like having the ability to do that, you create customers for life.
Finish out, but that's definitely one I want to come back to. Yep.
Yeah. So the last 2, one is have tough conversations early and often. And so I see this a lot. Someone will say, oh, I think something's wrong at the customer account or they're unhappy. I'm just going to wait for them to tell me. And you need to, again, be proactive and say, hey, something feels off, or I think we missed the mark. Let's talk this out together and figure out where we go from here.
Fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then number 8, drive results that matter. At the end of the day, the customer hired you to achieve an outcome. And so make sure that you're focused on driving those outcomes. You could do all of the other things perfectly, but if you're not actually driving the desired outcome that they want, you're not doing customer success. You're not making them successful.
I mean, that's awesome. I think, you read a lot right now, particularly on, Pavilion and Rev Genius and all these types of places. There's a lot of people right now that want to be a thought leader, want to share what they're doing. There's a lot of people looking for advice as well. And, people are like, don't talk about the weather, don't talk about your personal life, talk about this. But, and I think there's so much out there right now that people are kind of lost. And I always feel like it's super hard to force a relationship on someone. Likewise, you're never ever going to get along with everybody that you meet either. There will be always clients that you're drawn to, or they're drawn to you for whatever reason, right? And I think, of course, sometimes you go above and beyond sometimes for that person that you are super drawn to as well. I mean, how do you scale that? How do you sell your team, to build those relationships? Like, what is the kind of maybe one tip, one pointer to get on a client's level?
Yeah. And really a lot of it is meeting them where they're at. And so what I tell people is, not everyone is like you and not everybody wants what you want. And so it's flexing, your empathy muscle and emotional intelligence. And it's understanding from your customer's point of view, how do they like to communicate? What are the things that they're comfortable sharing? What are things that, what are topics that they clearly are avoiding or don't want to discuss? And so there isn't like a one size fits all. For me, it's taking the time to understand the customer, putting yourself in their shoes, and meeting them where they're at and giving them what they want. Right. And that you can kind of say that for any relationship, really. Like, you shouldn't impose any expectations on any other human being. You should take the time to understand what makes them different and unique, and, what their preferences are. And if you're able to, provide them with that, only if it makes sense for you too, right? Customer relationships, typically you'll want to do more of that proactive work to meet them where they're at, just given the nature of the relationship.
And narrate a little bit as well. And that's a super cool framework. And again, a lot of what I like about what you're saying is straightforward. It's just put in a very logical way. Right. And I think that's stuff that people could definitely quite easily comprehend and turn into action. So I think you're giving away a lot of good tips today. And I guess, that particular framework of thinking about the customer, voice of the customer first, meeting them where they're at, giving them what they want, driving the results that they are hoping to get, add that to the person, the values that you're hiring for, I guess, when you're building that company. Of course, like we talk about, we grow customers' revenues, and that will in turn help grow ours, right? But it's the customer first. And like you say, that's how companies can have success, when you can get those two elements. So company success, I see that as you pulling it all together. Would that be right?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is kind of the assumption that you've nailed the people success elements. You've created those conditions for your team. You have, created the right systems and process internally to deliver on those 8 keys to customer success that we just discussed. You're correct that all of this stuff is very simple and straightforward. And like with most simple and effective strategies, the difficulty lies in the execution, right? So these 5 keys to really bring it all together is, when you're thinking about those 2 foundational people and customer success pillars being in place, this is then what's really needed at the company level to be successful.
Okay.
And so number 1 is you need to clearly define your ideal customer profile and your customer journey. You need to really know who is your customer and what is the experience that you are looking to deliver, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into that, but we'll kind of keep it there for now.
Yeah.
Number 2 is being really methodical and thoughtful about goal setting. There's nothing that kills morale than quarter over quarter missing unattainable goals. Yeah. It makes 0 sense. Number 3, ensure that there's true company alignment on goals and incentives. I've seen so many examples of internal teams at the same company in competition with one another or finger pointing because goals and incentives were misaligned.
Yeah.
if you work for the same company, you are on the same team. But unfortunately, that's not the case. You hear about the
always
tensions between sales and marketing, sales and customer success, or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost always comes back to misaligned incentives.
Yeah.
Number 4 is regularly identify points of friction and address them quickly. Hey, we've grown like incredibly fast at Refine Labs, right? And things have been going good, but we're not perfect as well. And one of the things that I'm always on the lookout for is where are the growing pains? I know that we're going to have them. Like to think that we don't have those is naive. And so it's more about, I just need to know what they are so I can do something about them, right? And once you uncover something, you have to take action and tell your team, hey, I see this. This is what we're thinking. This is what we're going to do, and keep people updated and follow through.
Yeah.
And then number 5 is embrace the infinite mindset. So it's like Simon Sinek talks about this a lot. He wrote a book, but it's really about playing the long game. Like I've seen, and I've done it myself. I've succumbed to the pressure of making short-term decisions that I knew weren't the right thing to do, but I felt that I had to, right? And I've realized the negative consequences of that, and I just won't do that anymore. And it's understanding that, whatever situation you're in right now is a very small moment in a much bigger journey. And you should never sacrifice your integrity, your values, or do something that you really believe is not right, because of a moment at a company, right? Or someone pressuring you to do something. So it's that long game, that playing the long game mentality that's really crucial. So we could talk about each of those a lot. So I don't know if
we could have booked this in for a couple of hours. I think the big thing for me here is, I think it's relatively straightforward to really define that, ideal profile or persona. I think the goals and incentives, a lot of people do struggle with that. I think a lot of people will avoid the friction and hope it goes away, and it never goes away. And that alignment is absolutely key. I think, most of my career has been in the sales side, since I've been here, and starting to get more involved in customer success, customer experience, our own people experience, versus the different role of marketing, etc. You realize just how much, I think you said it, we're all on the same team, but even within the same sales team, people compete for the number 1 spot or the trip to Cancun or whatever it may be. And I think it's how do you have a place where people can be themselves? You trust people to have that autonomy. I think there's so much about what you've said there that I think will absolutely resonate with people. I think the difference, I was going to challenge you on something, is that long game, right? Because I was told, and I've not followed this advice, but I was told, you should never stay at a company more than 3 years. You'll get stale, you'll stop learning, etc., etc. I think the long game for most people has changed. People want success yesterday. So how do you, if we're flipping this from this unbelievable methodology to, how would you hire to build this team and hire people to bring this success? How do you assess if somebody is ready for that long game, has the values to play that long game, and will come and stay? Because quite clearly you can provide the methodology, the platform, the philosophies to be successful once they get there. How do you convince people that they should come and work for you?
Yeah. So I think one point that I want to make too, and I don't think this really has anything to do with like how long you stay at a company. I firmly believe that people are going to have many chapters and at bats in their careers at different places. I've been at companies as short as 2 years, as long as 7 years. It's varied quite a bit, right? And for me, there was always just a defining moment where it was very clear to me that this chapter is ending, right? And my next one is going to begin. And so I like to
go
frame
build a new company.
Yeah, I like to frame this concept, and I tell people, you're playing 2 games. You're playing your current game, which is your current role at your current company, but you also are playing your long game and your life game, right? And you want to make sure that like there are things that you should sacrifice for your current game. Titles, money, some of those things don't matter that much in the long term. What really matters is being able, being values aligned, having an opportunity to learn and to grow and to be surrounded by really talented people.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of that mindset that's important to think about. The second part of your question, which is really around how do you vet for this in an interview process, or how do you find out? So you said a term that I wanted to call out. You said, how do you convince someone to join your team? And I actually, I do this if I'm selling for Refine Labs, or if I'm interviewing or recruiting for Refine Labs, I'm flat out say, I am not here to convince you to do anything. I'm not trying to hard sell you this job. I'm trying to have a mutual discovery to determine if the partnership will be a good fit. And as part of this, I'm going to be really clear about what we're good at, what we believe in, what we're not good at.
But also where the challenges are. Yeah,
we just released our updated culture book, and there's literally a whole page about like all the hard parts about working here. Like, we're very transparent of
but for the right candidate, they look at those and go, I could help with that. That sounds exciting. I could fix that.
Yeah. And it's like, this is the environment. And like, it's up to you. Like, I want you to opt into this. I'm not going to try to convince you to do something. And I've had that experience in my career where someone was selling me really hard on a job. And then when I got in there, I realized that a lot of the things that they told me didn't really hold up. Right. And that, in my mind, that's like a bait and switch. And so for me, it's about, I ask a lot of open-ended questions to have people tell me about their career journey, their aspirations, what matters most to them in a place of work. And typically those types of open-ended questions give me enough information to make a judgment decision on if I believe their values aligned, right? And then additionally, I take an active part in helping them qualify for themselves if this is a place that they want to be at, or not.
I think not every company can be the highest paying company in that field. Not every company can have the coolest product, etc. I think, as a recruitment partner, we're always trying to, because there's no point in us selling the wrong opportunity to the wrong person, especially when we offer a 12-month guarantee, right? That would kill us. But for us, it's very much about really understanding the value proposition of that company. And the head of CS is going to be very different to an SDR, very different to a COO. There's going to be a different path or expectation for each role. And, I like what you said there, right? Because you're almost, I think a lot of candidates out there are scared to tell somebody they're hoping to, they're hoping to demonstrate they could be really good in this role, and say to them, but you know what, I want your job in 3 years. Where you're kind of like, somebody says, I want your job in 3 years, you might be like, that's exactly what I want, because I'm going to be there. And, I think we talk a lot about the kind of a 2019 recruiter versus the 2022 recruiter. It just doesn't work the same anymore, because right now, candidates, I think personally, know they're worth a lot more. They're really deeply thinking about what they want to do more now than they ever have, and they've got their eyes wide open. But a lot of hiring managers are like, okay, so why do you want to work here? And it just doesn't correlate. So, for me, you've definitely got a really good outlook on just life, and some super philosophies that I think we could go into for hours and hours. But we are unfortunately up on time, but I think there's so much in there that, there'll be lots of snippets from this, I'm sure. And for our clients, we're also going to do 3 quick bonus questions. And we'll record them just in a moment. So thank you very much for your time, Megan. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to seeing where you and Refine Labs go as part of that long game.
Thanks for having me, Nikki. Great conversation today.
Awesome.